Hi everyone, my name is Myfany Ruiz, and today we're going to dig into American theater. It is a huge part of American literature and the arts, so I think we just want to take a little bit of time to really dive into this genre. So let's talk about theater in the 17 and 1800s in the United States. So theater didn't get off to the best start, and there's a couple of different reasons for that. So the first reason is that a lot of the new colonies were led by religions that disagreed with a lot of the moral implications that arose from the performing arts. Now, this is nothing new. This has been happening since the time of Elizabethan theater and something we still see today. The arts, in particular, challenge our social norms or pre-existing ideas, and so a lot of times it's met with hesitation. Secondly, theater as we know it today really arose from the Renaissance, from British influence. So a lot of colonials were trying to stay away from those ideals. So much so that a performance in the 1700s started a riot because it was found out that one of the actors was a British soldier. However, a lot of these plays were still written by non-Americans and then performed in the Americas. For instance, La Théâtre de Neptune in Nouvelle France. That is a play that is actually performed in Canada, and it is about America, right? So it's about Neptune who comes and visits the Native Americans of the Americas and tries to teach them things, which is very colonial, right? It's a way of getting across this message of colonization. But those were the types of plays that were written at the time. So theater in the 18 and 1900s. So post-independence, popularity with theater grew. It was slow to start, but there was a decline in this question of morality in theater. It wasn't, though, until the 1850s where actors finally gained a foothold in the public's eye. They were finally seen as important. As excitement grew, so did the number of American playwrights and American actors. And it wasn't this, covet of Shakespeare anymore. Instead, there were some ripoffs of Shakespeare's where the bad guys were actually the British characters. Surprise, surprise. The audience loved the theater, but unfortunately, the shows at the time were very problematic. Many shows included racist portrayals of African Americans. These were called minstrel shows. Luckily, as time went on, the minstrels became less and less popular, and then there was this celebration of vaudeville, where it actually wasn't a plot, it was a bunch of unrelated acts all performing in the same show. So these acts included everything from trained animals, comedians, singers, even the great Harry Houdini. The vaudeville acts were very popular and had a foothold in society until the 1930s. Traditional theater was entering its golden age. So this is whenever the start of cinema began, and this is when actors were held in high regard, and the plots became a little bit more sophisticated than with the vaudeville. Another popular form of theater at the time was melodrama, and on As You Learn, there's an example that you can watch of this video so you can learn the basics. So theater as we know it today has gone through a number of different mediums and different ways of being performed. As vaudeville died off, musical theater and realism became increasingly popular. The realism productions had a more serious and mature tone to them. On the other hand, as the hype around musicals ensued, so did the growth of Broadway. So Broadway had a massive influence until the 1970s, until many theaters were forced to shut down. In 1990, however, the city of New York wanted to make a change, so they cleaned up the area and converted it to what it is today, especially an entertainment district specializing in lavish musicals and glitzy hotels. I'm sure many of you can think of some musicals off the top of your head, including Hamilton. But Hamilton may have never had a chance to be produced if it wouldn't have been for August Wilson. So, August Wilson is an American playwright best known for his unprecedented cycle of 10 plays. Now, these 10 plays chronicle the 20th century African American experience. Each play is set in a different decade and collectively became known as the Century Cycle. Put them all together, Wilson once said, and you have a history. So, Wilson explores a century's worth of African American struggle and triumph in his plays, beginning with the complex narrative of freedom at the turn of the century, Gem of the Ocean, and ending with the assimilation and sense of alienation of the 1990s, Radio Golf. After August Wilson's death, Peter Marks of the Washington Post wrote that Wilson did not simply leave a hole in the American theater, but a huge, yawning wound, one that will have to wait to be stitched closed by some expansive, poetic dramatist yet to emerge. So, how do we evaluate theater? Well, here are a couple of questions we need to ask ourselves. What was the playwright trying to do when writing their script and creating their production? How did they do it? So, what type of techniques did they use whenever they were creating their script? Were they successful, and was it worth it? Although a lot of you may not know a lot of theatrical examples off the top of your head, let's take this criteria and apply it to cinema. If you all know the movie series Star Wars, which is very popular, maybe this will help you kind of figure this out and this formula. So what was George Lucas trying to do? He was trying to create an epic space drama. How did George Lucas and his team do it? Well, they wrote a captivating script and they used cutting-edge technology to piece the film together. Were they successful? Well, I would say this many years later, yes, George Lucas and his team was very successful. And was it worth it? Yes, it really upped the ante for the American film industry, and with their technology and their franchise have really changed movies, I believe, for the better. So your assignment this week is to read August Wilson's Fences and then on your forum post, evaluate it. What was the playwright trying to do? How did he do it? Was he successful? And was it worth it? In your forum post, make sure you use text-based evidence to support your analysis of August Wilson's Fences. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a lovely week, and we'll connect back when we actually watch the production of August Wilson's Fences. But let's read it first, and let's really dive into the text. Talk to you next week.